Hey, Lisa.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
Lisa, we're on the inside steps of the keep.
Okay, I haven't gotten into the game yet. I figured I'd get onto the Mumble first, and the Mumble. Wow, there's a lot of interesting people here. Lots of beginners I see.
Yeah, Cheeto's already trying to make a pile on to jump onto the ramparts.
At least he's not running around in circles.
Okay, and fair warning, we're being broadcast on Twitch and recorded at the moment.
So no cursing, no swearing.
Dun dun dun.
All right, so if everybody can mute, if you have any questions for Lisa, you can PM them to Hoffman either in Mumble or in game.
I don't know how to PM you via Mumble.
Just double click on the name and then you can send a PM in Mumble.
Oh, there we go.
Anyone that's not muted besides Lisa, I will mute. So thank you all for coming. This is the actual first class of the Pathfinder University. For those of you that haven't been reading the forum, we've decided to set up a group for new players to actually create a place for new players to learn, and they're going to be based out of Thornkeep. This is our first class in the series. Next class will actually be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern and 10:30 p.m. Spitfire will be doing classes at that time. And then on Sunday, we're actually going to do a new player day from 1 to 8 Eastern, which is from server uptime to about 8 hours later. And for anyone that wants to check it out, pathfinderuniversity.com. So Lisa, you want to introduce yourself as you run into the room?
Sure. First off, thank you, Hoffman, for asking me to be involved here in the first ever Pathfinder University class. I'm Lisa Stevens, CEO of Paizo Publishing, COO of Goblinworks, and an avid player of Pathfinder Online. Anyway, here to kind of do what I can to illuminate what I can, and I'm looking forward to, hey, get out, you're on my way. Looking forward to seeing what questions people have and what kind of fun time we're going to have here. So let's do it, Hoffman.
All right, Lisa. So first two questions. One is, what the heck does COO at Goblinworks mean? The other thing is, what is your Pathfinder character on Pathfinder Online?
Oh, you want me to out my character? Oh, I can have a target on me. I don't know if I want to do that.
You don't have to say the name, but what type of character? What are you building?
Oh, okay. So I'll take the first one first. COO. I'll let everybody know I hate titles. I think titles are the stupidest thing in the world because they never accurately capture or reflect what someone actually does. And so I don't. COO means nothing. It's just it's an executive title, and there's Cheetle running around. Anyway, it's just, you know, what I do over at Goblinworks is I'm a liaison a lot with Paizo on a regular basis. I'm kind of the in-house Paizo person who you know, kind of like looks at what's happening and kind of thinks about it from a Pathfinder point of view. Obviously, there's people at Paizo like James Jacobs and Eric Mona and Vic Wirtz and Jeff Alvarez and Sarah Robinson and stuff who are all involved and come over and give feedback on stuff on a weekly basis. But I'm, you know, kind of the person that sits there and deals with it. And then currently, I'm also leading up a lot of the community stuff. I think it's really important. Anybody that knows my background in the tabletop knows that I've been involved with organized play and gaming communities for pretty much my entire 30-year career. So I'm looking forward to taking some of that experience and leveraging it over here to Pathfinder Online. My character in the game, I'm currently, so if I had a choice, I would have picked a ranger. I've always liked to do female elven rangers. So currently I'm doing a fighter build that has is bow, greatsword, and then I have a little bit of rogue stuff I've been throwing in for mostly perception and stealth, and then a little bit of healing to kind of capture that flavor of it. So as more systems go in for roguey stuff, I will add more stuff like that.
And Lisa, what's been the best and worst thing about your character and kind of getting to know PFO?
Well, it's interesting. So, I mean, this is my first MMO, and the reason this is my first MMO is because I'm one of these people that gets addicted to things. And if I ever played an MMO, it would envelop my life and become a huge part of my life. And my life's been really, really busy, and I haven't had time for that. So I've purposely stayed away from things I knew I could get addicted to. So, what was the question again?
Kind of, what's your experience? What's been the best and worst of kind of coming in here and creating a character?
Cool. So yeah, I think a lot of for me, it's been interesting because I came in figuring I'm going to do a lot of solo play. I'm going to, I don't have a lot of time, especially can't play on the weekends because my internet at home is garbage. I can't even log into Pathfinder Online from my internet at home. So I can only play when I'm at work, and I figured I'm pretty busy, so I'm not going to have a lot of time. So I figured I just kind of lurk around the outside of the game and just kind of play solo. But actually, the best stuff that's happened is interacting with groups and hanging out with players on Mumble or TeamSpeak and grouping up to take care of escalations or whatever it happens to be, getting a shipment from one settlement to the next, or all that kind of stuff is much more exciting than I ever thought it would be. And I've really I understand a lot of the tabletop players will talk a lot about wanting to play solo in the game, and I get it because that's where I'm totally came from. But I think if they get involved with the community, even if that just means talking to other fellow people in their community on Mumble or TeamSpeak while they're out doing their solo stuff, it still has a feeling of being part of a group and having that kind of interaction with people just makes the game richer and more exciting. And I can't wait to, when I get log on the game, first thing I do is go and talk to people.
So that's a great segue. One of the questions we've had is kind of, what about a world chat, a company chat? I mean, there's really no way to connect to people unless you do an outside Mumble or something.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's definitely, you'd be better off talking to Lee about World Chat or Ryan, because they have strong opinions on why you shouldn't have it, and I'm kind of one of the opinion that we should have it, but we have lots of discussions internally about it, and I haven't been able to bend them to my will yet, but I'm working on it. But in terms of company chat and settlement chat, that's very, very soon coming into the game. It's if it hasn't already been programmed, it's in the process of being programmed as I'm speaking right now. So I think there's going to be a lot of that'll help a lot, knowing that you can get on your settlement, the chat, and chat with people like that. But frankly, chat doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't take the place of talking to people over like we are right now, and it's just I encourage everybody to figure out where their settlements are getting together to talk and getting on there, because I think that just takes it up a level. But we will have the company and settlement chats coming in very soon.
Yeah, I hear you on the Mumble, and that's why this Galarian Mumble setup, anyone can use it, and that's just a reminder that if anyone wants to use it later, it's all theirs.
I love it.
So, all right, with that in mind, what is your opinion on kind of this crowd forging thing? I mean, how much control do we as players have versus, you all? I hear you're fighting with Ryan and Lee, and you haven't won the battle in World Chat. Are we going to win it? I mean, what's your thoughts?
I think, this whole crowd forging thing is kind of a new thing. I mean, in some ways it's an old thing. I mean, in Paizo, we've been doing play tests and getting feedback from players on all of our books since we started publishing the Pathfinder role-playing game. That said, it's with an MMO, this is kind of a new thing, and it's not designed by consensus or designed by democracy or voting or anything, but it is being involved, and I think from my experience so far in watching the crowdforging process and early enrollment, I think a big thing is when people are able to back up their thoughts with facts, statistics. We went and did this, and here's what we found, and we went gathering for 20 hours in one hex, and here's what we discovered, and we did a combat, and here's what we saw when we were using different abilities. I think that kind of stuff makes the designers stand up and say, well, that wasn't how it was supposed to work, or whatever, or, well, that's really not giving us the benefit we were looking for. Maybe we should look at fixing that. Also, just well thought out ideas, and sometimes there's really great ideas out there that are just that are the word I'm looking for. I mean, they're good ideas, but they would take so much effort away from what we're doing that it's like, I wish we'd had those ideas 4 months ago. And sometimes, like, for instance, some of the ideas in the War of the Towers it's like, yes, good ideas, but basically what you're discussing, what you're coming up with is what we're going to do for POIs and outposts. And we'd much rather have POIs and outposts earlier rather than War of the Towers lasting longer, because we put effort into making War of the Towers better. And so sometimes you make CrowdForge and get some great ideas, and they're not practical for whatever reason. But a lot of times there's really good ideas, and I see someone is on my head. So a lot of times there's really good ideas, and I think that it's a learning process, and I think it's taking everybody, both the players and the people working at Goblinworks, time to kind of figure out how to use the crowdforging process, but I can tell you right now, it's paying dividends, because we talk about stuff that we read and hear about every day.
Yeah, so I want to ask a kind of question on that crowdforging. One of the big debates is this whole PvP thing. You got the Care Bears versus the murder hobos. I mean, how do we find somewhere in the middle and make this work?
Well, I'm not a designer. I don't play one on TV, so I'm not sure I know the exact answer to that question. I think it's going to take some fiddling. I think it's going to take having a game system which is robust enough where people that want a PvP have plenty of opportunity to do so, and people that want to focus on other ends of the spectrum have an ability to do so. And but bottom line is, you can't make a game for everybody, and the old saying, can't do all things for all people. Bottom line, we're going to have a game we're making here, and we've been pretty consistent with the type of game our vision for the end game. And if you want to have a game where you never have to see another soul, never have to interact with anybody, it's probably not your game. This is a game that's definitely about grouping up and forming adventuring parties and companies and settlements and ultimately nations. And that's where the real breadth of the game is going to be. And I think there's a place inside that structure for lots of different play styles, whether it's the guy who wants to go out and explore the world and by himself and find cool things and bring them back to the settlement, kind of the old trapper of yore who would go out and for 6 months at a time and go trapping for mink and muskrat, and then come back to settlement for 1 week and get a shave and a shower and get some money and then head back out. That play style works just as much as someone who wants to run a settlement or wants to patrol and make sure that gatherers stay out of their hexes or whatever. I think there's different play styles, and I think the way we're going to get everybody to coexist is by providing the different play styles, each satisfying game.
So I hear a lot of kind of tabletop players making the adjustment over here and having a little trouble, especially with the PvP part. Any thoughts on the kind of transition from tabletop to MMO?
So I maybe. I think I'm a tabletop player making that transition over, so I get it. And so far, no one's ganked me when I've been out there gathering and stuff, though I totally expect it'll happen sooner rather than later, just because it's just the nature of the game. my philosophy on tabletop gaming is that if there's no risk, there's no reward. I know if I'm if I'm playing a tabletop game and I'm able to just I'm able to do whatever I want, and there's no risk to it, and because the GM's going to make sure I always win and stuff like that. Where's the fun? If there's not a possibility of dying, why bother? It'd be like playing a game of poker and everybody wins. It's just why, and it's not a game, that it's not fun. I think there has to be some risk reward, and I think tabletop players need to. I think that's the root of D&D. I mean, if you look at what Gygax created when he created Dungeons and Dragons, he created, if you've ever read some of his books about playing the game and his philosophy on it, it was all about risk and reward. I mean, the stories he'd always tell were when characters died, and in his game, and the lengths people had to go to overcome some of those setbacks and stuff. That's the exciting thing, not the fact that they took on 5 dungeons in a row and always won. It's the setbacks that makes the engaging story. And so I think it's just a different point of view. I think you have to kind of realize that there has to be that chance that you could have a losing experience, but it's not a losing thing forever. It's like, hey, I lost what I gathered for a bit of time. Oh well, next time I'll be a little smarter, and maybe I won't take the road into town. Maybe I'll make sure I'm not coming back during a PvP window, or maybe next time I'll go out with some friends instead of doing it by myself. Or next time I'll just realize by doing it myself during a time when there might be bandits around, I'm risking it, and that's just a risk I'm willing to take. And I think that makes it more interesting, in my opinion.
I agree with you, but my tabletop group doesn't agree either when they die. So, I think it's the same with the MMO.
Well, I mean, if you want to play a game where you always win, then, I don't know. I'm not sure what game you can play that. Maybe, I don't know, Monopoly? I don't know. But I just, I mean, I guess in a tabletop game, you can have a GM that just makes sure that everybody wins all the time. And if that's the game you want, then, you have more flexibility in a tabletop game than you do in a computer game. Because a computer game, you could lose.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a PvP myself, but, G-Punk did chase me down and shoot me in the back, so, hey, it worked, and it did make for a little fun. So, how about, talk about settlements and companies. There's been a lot of discussion about, how do I get my company going? How do I get my settlement going? And is it possible to be a small settlement or company and make it in this game? What do you think?
Well, there's a really interesting blog that Lee is going to be posting up soon, probably in the next couple of days, that I've already approved. It goes into a fair bit of detail about all this thing and talks about
it's on the blog.
Is it right now? Cool. I think it's. I mean, I asked him to write that yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, because I wanted to let people understand how what they're doing now is going to affect what's coming in the short-term future, like companies and settlements. And I think Lee did a good job. I mean, basically, if you want to specialize into a niche, you could be small and relevant. And because you're not trying to be everything to everybody. You're not trying to, you can't be the big military powerhouse and be small. You can't be the big economic powerhouse and be small. You can't, you can't be the big logistics caravan thing and be small, but you might be able to, be small if you wanted to be a mercenary band that gets hired on by bigger people to be involved with stuff. You might be able to be small if you wanted to be the best jeweler or something like that, and put yourself in an area where there's lots of gems, and you can be really focus all your efforts into that. Or I could see in the future people might be able to be really good at enchanting swords or making potions or something. I think there might be an ability to kind of focus like that. And so I think that's where you can be small and relevant. But if you want to be small and you also want to control huge swaths of territory, it's just not going to work. And so I think you either have to group up to do really big things, or you have to kind of stay small and focus.
And I think on small versus large, my feeling with the long term in this game, the companies that are quote unquote large now are small in the numbers that are needed for settlement. I've seen numbers where you need over 1,000 people to run a settlement. What do you think about the size of a settlement to actually be a powerhouse?
I think time's going to tell. I mean, it depends how many people are in the game and how many people are people we end up enticing to come play. I mean, if it's, you look at EVE Online, you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on there. Well, it's to be large, you have to have a fair number of people. But if we end up with 20, 30, 40,000 people, then large will be relative. And so, I think it's over time. It's gonna depend on how big we get, and that's gonna make a difference on how many people you need to have. I don't know if I answered your question, but I got the best job I could there.
Yeah, I think the other thing that size a lot of people kind of get into is I know Fud's got his post on there of 1,500 or 1,100 or 1,600 depending on which post people in here, and you said in there the majority of players are out of there. I mean, how many players do we need to make this game viable? I mean, and how many players do we have now? Or can you give us an idea?
I actually don't have that exact number, and I'm not sure Ryan or Mark would want me to divulge it right now if I did. I don't know. You're talking about someone who's new to MMOs. I really don't know how many we need to be viable or relevant or whatever. I mean, time will tell again. I think we'll know when we hit it because people will say, okay, this feels good to me. And we're obviously not there yet, but we're growing all the time.
Well, let me ask the question a different way, because it really wasn't about specific numbers. I think there are those who kind of say, hey, you know what, before I invest more money into the game, whether it's, time or actual money, I want to see if it's going to succeed. I mean, is it going to last? Is it whatever? I mean, what's your kind of long-term outlook for the game?
So you're basically, it's the same philosophy you see on Kickstarters, where if it looks like a Kickstarter is not going to succeed, people won't pledge money to it because they only want to pledge money to it if it's going to succeed. And never mind the fact that, at least for Kickstarters, if you pledge money and it doesn't succeed, then you're not nothing. But you still see this huge, people actually pulling money out of something, a Kickstarter that they're afraid is not going to succeed. And there's definitely people that's about, that's an important thing for them. And I'm not sure you can say anything different to that. I mean, it's like a role-playing game. I've been doing role-playing games for my whole life, and I've done big role-playing games like Pathfinder and D&D, and I've done smaller role-playing games like Ars Magica. And when I was doing Ars Magica, we had a lot of people who didn't want to get into the game, even though they loved the game, because they were afraid basically that they would buy into the game and then we wouldn't be there supporting them. But there was a lot of other people that were like excited, like, well, hey, the game's done. You got your core book. I can make this stuff up myself. And so I think the people that like a game in its infancy are the people who are the creators, people who want to be a part of the creation process and want to help establish this. And then there's people that want to know that something, they're not going to go root on the Seattle Seahawks unless there's 100,000 other people who want to do it, because they're not going to be one of the if there's only 10,000, they're not going to show up because they don't want to support something that's not successful. And so I think that's just life, in general. I mean, success. There's people that want to be around stuff that they think is successful, and all thing we can do to do that is just be successful. And again, I don't know if I answered your question.
I don't think it's an easy question to answer. I mean, it kind of goes along with the question that people ask of, should I give my buddy invite out, and is it ready for a buddy invite? I mean, my personal belief is if they want to be part of creating the game, yeah, you should. But if they just want to have a finished product, I don't think so. I mean, what's your thought?
No, I think you're 1,000% right, and I think if you saw my email that I sent out to the Paizo list, I went way out of my way to say this is not a finished game. This is a game that's got warts and it's rough. There's things that there's bugs and there's features that aren't implemented, but yet I find it, personally, a very satisfying game because I feel like I'm in on the ground floor and I'm seeing the future settlements and companies being built up from the ground, and I see economy bootstrapping up, and it is the efforts I'm seeing of people growing the game, things like the Pathfinder University starting, and it's exciting. This is an exciting time to be in the game, but you have to have an attitude of finding excitement in being part of that building process. Not everybody's is interested in that. And so I would look at my friends and say, is this friend of mine one of the people that would be excited about coming along for the ride and working with me to help building something, or is this person, the person you want to wait until it's more done? And I think that's a person by person, player by player decision to make, and there's no right or wrong answer to that.
And that's fair. So Aussie Dwarf of Fullerton has kind of asked, what are the plans for adding polish to PFOs? So like when we get better game settings, better menus, more in-game documentation.
All right, run this. So more polished what now?
Set game settings, better menus, and more in-game documentation.
Okay. I mean, that's I don't know if you remember we had a blog just a while ago. We were talking about what part of our programming and our time is spent on polish and what part is spent on new features. And at this stage of the game, we spend about 2/3 of our times polishing, fixing bugs, making various things better that already exist, and then we're 1/3 of the time adding new things to the game. So we're more focused on the polish and the fixing right now than we are expanding to new things.
So I see the polish and fixing is 2/3 of the time, and I have to ask from the Pathfinder University side and learning, how about more help for the new players coming in? I mean, it's a pretty steep learning curve right now.
Yeah, I know we know that, and it's definitely something that's on the list. There's a very large list, and we debate it regularly about what's what needs to come next. And there's just again, it may not be a right or wrong answer. A lot of times it's your gut about which things. Which things to focus on, which things not to. But there's definitely things in the very short term that are aimed at making the game more accessible and easier to play.
I hear you, but I think at least my experience is without some of the guides like Spitfire and Cheadle and Nymon and others made, I don't know that I would have made it through the first couple of weeks. So it's just a balancing act that I'm trying to figure out how to help people with.
I mean, people like you are, and Spitfire and Cheadle and stuff, putting the time into making guides and having information accessible is, I mean, the good and the bad part about Pathfinder Online in my mind is that we're all doing this kind of together, and it's not just, we're not just a game company over behind closed doors making a game on our own. We're kind of all working this thing together, and that means that sometimes when we're working on one thing, the community is helping pick up slack in another area, and we can't do it without help from the community, and the community can't make the game without us either. So it's definitely a very symbiotic thing, and it's at any given moment there's something that's what we've kind of termed a pain point, and it's that's something in the game which causes people stress and agony and pain, and might make them leave the game, and we have to prioritize those and see which ones need the love right now in terms of polishing and which ones don't, and that list gets debated all the time because we only have so many hours in the 7-day work week to work on stuff. And so it's probably the most frustrating part about making a game like Pathfinder Online, at least from a management point of view, because you know where the problems are, what the issues are, and what needs to be worked on, and you see everybody working super duper hard, and you see lots and lots of things coming out every 2 weeks, and lots of fixes and things being added to the game, and just all the stuff going on, and yet there's just every time, if you put 100 new things out every 2 weeks, you could have probably easily put 1,000 things out in the 2 weeks, and you still would have pain points. So it's just it's hard. In many ways, you're super proud, but in ways you're like frustrated that you can't get more done.
And I hear you, and we appreciate what you're working on. And I think the question is kind of how do we help you, and how can you help us help others? And I think the thing is, and Fiery kind of makes a point on this about, Goblinworks felt like Goblinworks wanted people to help recruit and then help new players through the game. But with World Chat gone and some of the other things, it's really hard to reach new players and others. And I've seen that struggle myself. I mean, how do we reach people and how do we help them so they're not just wandering the woods aimlessly?
Good question. I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, I mean, sounds like a good discussion topic.
I'm glad we're not the only ones looking for that answer. All right, so another question, kind of, what should we expect for kind of buildings that are coming in? And what should we expect now? I know we don't want to call them POIs, or are we going to call them POIs or holdings or what? What do you see coming?
Well, I see lots of things coming, and if I spoiled exactly what was coming, I'd probably get shot when I went back to Goblinworks.
You got to give us something.
Oh, jeez, I wish I could. I mean, it's. All right, I'll tell you about like one thing that I saw the design for the other day, and it's a POI, and it's a manor house. And it's this very cool manor house that starts off as just like a little, like a tower kind of stockade thing, and then when you upgrade it, it adds more and more, levels and width to it and stuff like that, and becomes, and I don't know exactly what it does because I don't have the design document on me, but I know it's kind of focused more on military stuff and protection of settlements and things like that, and because every POI, from my understanding, is focused on augmenting some aspect of gameplay. So if you built a mine, let's say, and that's another POI you can have as a mine, it'll help get the bulk resources of rock, kind of rock resources like iron ore and coal and stuff. But those bulk resources that you use to develop your settlements or keep your settlements keep going. And so everything's kind of focused on that kind of thing. I mean, I know there's just a ton of different things like that, and I keep forgetting which things are POIs and which are outposts, because they all kind of blend to me. Because I see a never-ending string of these things, coming through for approvals from those guys. But I know outposts are supposed to be more about the actual getting of materials and stuff like that. So the gathering of, you might do a hunting lodge or something like that, and that would, or hunting camp, and that might be something where, you're gaining animal type of stuff, foodstuffs that you're able to put back that goes back to the POI, and then that goes to the settlement. And there's a ton of different POIs. I don't know how many, but it's more than 10 and maybe more than 20. It's a lot of different things, a lot of choices, and they're all going to have different. Some are going to be better in mountain hexes, some are going to be better in plains hexes, some are going to be better in woods hexes, but doesn't mean you couldn't put one that's good in plains into the mountains. It just won't be as good as the one in the plains. And then they're going to all have upkeep costs and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot out there, and I look forward to one day having Lee or Torque or somebody talking about the stuff on the blog, because I think it's every time I sit down and talk with them, I find out how deep and rich the system is, and it's not that far away. I mean, like I said, I've been seeing art resources coming through every week for months now, and so there's a lot already built, and it's really just in a very, very short period of time will be coming in. And for those people that got to play around with some small holdings on the test server, it's kind of exciting when you actually find a plot of land and you have your thing and you put it up and you realize you did that to the world, and that's something that you put there and that you control and own. It's a pretty neat feeling, and I think once POIs and outposts get in the game, it's going to have that feeling of, I decided to do this here, and for whatever reason, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think what you just missed was a massive nerdgasm across the group, that they were just really excited about that. And I have to say I was lucky to see one of those small holdings in the test server, so I'm pretty excited to see those coming. So how about, you were talking resources, how about gushers we've been hearing about for quite a while?
I think basically gushers and stuff like that is just, part of the whole process of the economic process, and it ties into the whole aspect of gathering materials and bringing it to your settlement for upkeep or crafting or whatever. And it's on the list. It's it's there, and we've talked about it already. It's everybody kind of knows what the gushers are. I'm not sure that I have too much more to add to it, other than we know it's something that needs to get done, and we know there's some people are really excited about that. Thank you, Cheadle. Other people are probably also excited about it. But if I had a dime per time Cheadle asked me about gushers, I'd probably have a few $100,000.
Yeah, Cheadle asks lots of questions. So we're going to go down the geek path rather than the development path. And Aussie Doors is a great question here. What type of things do you get to approve as, Paizo / Goblinworks, and what type of things do they get to do on their own?
Well, I mean, as Goblinworks is a licensee of Paizo for Pathfinder, and so technically Paizo approves everything. There's pretty much not anything that goes in the game that we haven't approved. Now, the reality is, I'm not sure Paizo really cares fundamentally what the math is behind something, and so if Lee comes and goes on and on about how awesome his resource distribution mathematics is, I think everybody at Paizo's eyes might glaze over and say, like, I'm sure it's good, as long as he's not, as long as his resources don't have things that aren't in Pathfinder, I'm not sure we care exactly. I mean, we care in that we want the game to be good, and we want, the math has to bear up in game and make the game good. But that kind of stuff we tend to not really have a lot of. We know we know the basis of the game system. We know, that stuff's been pitched to Paizo. Here's what the gameplay is going to be like, and we've all said, hey, that sounds pretty cool. We get together once a week, and if Lee has some ideas about how he wants to change the game system, or a new idea of a new system he wants to put in, a lot of times he'll run it by us for our thoughts, and a lot of times we're just like, sounds good, but every so often they'll be like, that sounds a little wonky, have you ever thought of this and that? And then those meetings can be really long, because we'll get into debates about game mechanics, and sometimes we'll tell them, like, here's how we do it in Pathfinder. I don't know if that helps you, but you might be able to take some learning from what we did at Pathfinder, and sometimes it's like, yeah, that doesn't cross over at all. There's nothing that you can learn from Pathfinder. And so in mechanics and stuff like that, we kind of get the broad strokes. Occasionally we get nuts and bolts, and then art resources, basically everything that gets put in the game, we see it in sketch format, we see it as it's being built, and we see it as its finished format for approvals. And so basically every single thing gets approved that way.
Yeah, and Eric's actually asked specifically, kind of how closely do you want James Jacobs and others on the Paizo creative team to work with Goblinworks on PFL?
I mean, James and those guys, I as much time as they can put in. Obviously, James is part of the team that meets once a week to approve art and other design things. And Jason Bowman's on that team. Eric Mona's on the team. Sarah Robinson, who's our senior art director, is on that team. Jeff Alvarez, a COO. Vic Wirtz, my husband, and also co-owner of Paizo's on there. I mean, we put some pretty big head honchos spend at least an hour or two every week looking and improving Pathfinder Online stuff. And then, of course, I spend even more time.
All right. And Drax has a question about kind of what support will Goblinworks give to third-party developers that want to develop supplemental resources like add-ons, fan sites, etc.?
I don't know the answer to that question. Obviously, I think we're long-term. I know Ryan's talked at a couple times in various blogs and message boards and stuff about our long-term goal is we'd like to see a real vibrant community creating resources for the game. We've talked about once dungeons are in the game that there might be a way for third-party dungeons that you can purchase in the online store and play in the game and stuff like that. And that, of course, would require support from Goblinworks and sort of tool sets and things like that. But I think as we get further into the game, I think there'll be more opportunity for other people to come in and help us put an imprint on the game. I don't know if that answered the question, but I think it did.
Yeah, and I'm having fun with some of these questions now. Red's got an interesting question, which is, has anything on the PFO side prompted any changes on the tabletop side?
I don't think so yet. I think the game is still... Pathfinder as an RPG, tabletop RPG is kind of set in its ways at the moment. I think that I see that nice quote from Decius down there about. I think Lee's gonna hate me now. Pathfinder is a tabletop RPG is pretty set in its way at the moment. If there's ever a new edition down the line, maybe there's some things we can learn from Pathfinder Online. Let's give it a few years to shake out, and maybe we'll learn something from that. But fundamentally, they're kind of very different games. There's obviously the aspect of killing things and taking their stuff, but a lot of the whole settlement thing is pretty unique to Pathfinder Online, and we do settlement slightly differently on the tabletop. So if you ever saw Ultimate Campaign book, we have a whole thinking about settlements and kingdoms in there and stuff.
Great. So Red has a good question and follow up, which is kind of what's the origin of Lisa and Ryan coming together in the start of PFO?
That's a fun question. So Ryan and I worked together at Wizards of the Coast on Dungeons and Dragons 3rd Edition. I started I was the first employee ever at Wizards of the Coast back in 1991, and we got Ryan into the company when we acquired TSR. We also acquired a game called Five Rings Publishing Group, and Ryan came over with that, and he did a bunch of stuff with collectible card games, Legend of the Five Rings, and a few other things like that at Wizards of the Coast. And then when we started coming up with the idea to do a 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons, we kind of got thrown together. And I was doing business development at the time, which is a fancy way of saying looking at businesses and trying to break down them in terms of financials and strategies and stuff like that. And so I just had a newly minted MBA at that time, so it was kind of a good way to throw my brain and what I'd learned into an actual task of building a business with Ryan. And we started working together. And I've said this publicly before, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. But when I first met Ryan, I hated him. I absolutely hated him. Just everything about him I didn't like, and he just totally rubbed me the wrong way. And the more we worked together, the more I realized he's absolutely probably one of the more brilliant people I've ever met. And he stretched me. He made me as an individual push for boundaries and goals and stuff that I wouldn't have maybe gone for on my own. And together we created a really cool game in 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons. And we had a bigger team. It wasn't just the two of us. We had a core group of 6 to 8 people that were really intimately involved in helping us do that. But that team I really enjoyed that a lot, and I enjoyed working with Ryan, and we got a healthy respect for each other. And then I left Wizards in 2000, and Ryan left in 2001, and we talked a little bit when he left at that point, like, oh, we should work together sometime in the future. But then he went off and went over to CCP to work on EVE Online, and I had started Paizo, and so we kind of diverged off, and we kept, we were still friends. We'd see each other at cons and stuff, and then just kind of kept in each other's lives a little bit, but we were doing our own thing. And then when Ryan left CCP, God, it feels like about 5 or 6 years ago now. It probably wasn't that long ago, but it feels like a long time. Maybe it was 2010. When I saw the email on, message to his friends saying he was leaving and he was looking for new opportunities, and I saw, I emailed him and said, oh, dude, sorry that didn't work out for you. What you gonna do? And he said, have you ever thought about making a Pathfinder, MMO? And I'm like, well, I thought about it, but I'm not. Paizo's not in this position to do that. And he said, what if I come up and pitch you on an idea? And I said, we can pitch all day. Doors open. So he spent a couple months coming up with a presentation on MMOs and what he saw as the opportunities and where the landscape of MMOs was, and it was exciting. And so then at that point, Paizo paid him a set amount of money to create a design document for Pathfinder Online, and we had a lot of iterative process back and forth. But we basically came up with the base document that Pathfinder Online spawned out of, and from there it was then it was like, okay, how do we make this into reality? And it's Kickstarter, and then it's just it kind of grew from there, and now where we're at.
How long?
Might have been 2012, maybe 11. I don't know. I'd have to go look in my archive here. I'll run over to my archive here and see what my oldest. I got some stuff from 2011 here. Looks like January 2011.
So January 2011, and here we are in 2015. Is this what you thought?
Oh,
is this where you thought you'd be?
I'm not sure I knew where he'd be. Like I said, I've never made an MMO before. I've been involved with licensing of video games and and Baldur's Gate and things like that back in the 90s. But I know they take time, and it's. I mean, part of me thought we'd be further along, and part of me thought we wouldn't be as far. And I'm pretty proud of where we got and where we're at right now with the amount of resources. I mean, the fact that there's people standing out there in a game world talking to me interacting with me right now is pretty mind-boggling to me. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at. And do you always want to be further along? Sure. I'm probably one of those people that likes the destination more than the journey, but I can enjoy the journey occasionally too.
Hey, that's fair. So we've done a little history here, and some people got some a little bit harder questions about some of the game mechanics. Like, for example, there's a lot of things being developed right now, and a lot of changes and feats and all that, and there's been a lot of discussion about rollback of XP, and the developers have been like, nope, not happening. What are your thoughts on that?
I defer to my colleagues who have infinitely more experience with MMOs than I do. They know what to do with this kind of thing, and I just like whatever they know. I mean, they've all been involved with MMOs for years, and so I trust their instincts exactly on that.
So that sounds like I need to ask Ryan and Lee to come do one of these chats with us. Huh?
Sounds like.
Good, so we'll have your support on that, hopefully. Hey, I also know that you're a different type of geek, not just a role-playing. I hear you're a Star Wars geek.
I prefer to call myself a Star Wars collector, but yes.
Tell us a little about your collection. I heard about that, and you got to share it with the group.
Oh Jesus! You're just trying to make me into the biggest geek, aren't you?
Lisa, it makes you lovable.
Yeah. If you want to, so my husband and I, Vic Wirtz, we back in the '90s, we went to, we always liked Star Wars, and I was a fan. I saw the movie when it first came out in '77, and I was a little older. I was in high school, actually junior high at the time. No, actually, I was high school, and I loved the movie, and so I read the books, comics, and stuff like that. And it was always one of my favorite movies. And then when I met my husband, he's younger than me by about 9 years, and he was into action figures and all that kind of stuff at the same time I was into novels and the books. And anyway, he told me about his action figure collection, and at the time they had just relaunched the action figures for Star Wars, and so I ended up buying a Boba Fett action figure at Toys R Us one day on a lark, and I gave it to him as a gift that night. And before you know it, he was out buying all the action figures, and it didn't take much longer for us to just start expanding into other toys. And before you know it, we were buying posters and prototypes and props from the movies and everything you could possibly imagine for Star Wars. And our collection is grown from a couple boxes in the closet to a room to 2 rooms in the house to now we have a wing in the house, and we're going to be building an actual building outside of our house, about 10,000 square foot building to house our Star Wars collection. It's just going to become that big of a part of our lives, and it's probably one of the top 5 biggest collections in the world. And it's something we do together, and it's something I'm really proud of. I was actually, and also just to add to my geekdom, I was actually the president of the Star Wars fan club for about 3 years too. I got to travel around the world and go to conventions and do speeches like this at big Star Wars conventions, and got to meet a lot of the actors, and it was a pretty cool time. And then the last bit of geekdom is we have a really cool theater in our home. It's called the Death Star Theater. You can Google it. If you Google Death Star Theater, you'll see pictures of what it looks like and articles written. And we've had TV crews come in and do interviews and take shots in there, and it's pretty cool. But it was actually designed by the guy who designed episodes 1 and 2 for George Lucas was the designer of it. So it's kind of like the tip of the geekdom quotient there.
And Spitfire asks, what's your coolest prop you have?
Coolest prop. This is always a tough one because you have so many things that you love. I'll give you some ideas, some of the things I have, but that's not the coolest. I'll get to the coolest. In terms of props, we have a hero, Obi-Wan Kenobi hero lightsaber. We have dueling lightsabers for Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. We have...
Wait a minute, you're talking about the real ones, right?
Yeah, the
from
ones
the movie?
actually used in the movie. Yeah, we have Stormtrooper Blaster from Star Wars and Empire. We have Rebel Blasters from Star Wars that we use in Star Wars and Empire. We have... I have the mask of the Ewok that died in Return of the Jedi. The only one that died in the whole movie. I have that mask. I have Greedo's mask. Greedo who gets shot by Han Solo in the Cantina, and that's been always one of my favorites. I have a Millennium Falcon that was used in the recording of the asteroid sequence in Empire. I got the headset Han Solo wears when the Millennium Falcon he's shooting down TIE fighters, and we got lots and lots and lots and lots of different things. But my favorite thing is a favorite because of the story. The guy who created all the masks and stuff for Star Wars is a guy named Stuart Freeborn, and Stuart was a genius in the UK in making masks, and he passed away I think last year. way in his, I think it was late 90s. But before, he knew he only had a few years left in his life. He reached out to fans to take possession of some of his more cherished things, and through that he approached through a friend of mine. He approached me on buying everything he used to create Yoda, and so I actually have all the molds and the notebook and everything for creating Yoda, and including a number of screen used Yoda heads. All the molds for making everything. It's really cool, and it's since Yoda is such a key part and one of my favorite characters, just knowing that Stuart Freeborn kind of almost bequeathed this to me to become the caretaker of it probably makes that the coolest thing I own.
I'm sorry, that is the coolest thing that you own Yoda. So the last question, PFO related. We got a lot of companies here, a lot of players. What advice would you give to companies and settlements in this game? And what would you say to them?
Well, obviously, I think figure out what you want to do in the game and really focus on that. I think I think the key to the game is reaching out to other companies and other settlements and other groups, and whether it's reaching out to form out alliances or reaching out to become bitter enemies or whatever. I think it's those interactions between the different groups is where the game gets exciting and interesting. But I think it's that grouping mechanic that's going to make this game exciting and something that you want to stay with and do. I'll go back to my tabletop experience again. Probably if you ask me what the single most important factor of Pathfinder tabletop role-playing game success is, I'd say it's Pathfinder Society, because that Pathfinder Society is this group of players around the world that get together and game together and go to game stores and run games, go to conventions and run games, but it's all about the group. It's all about getting together and forming a community, whether it's in your game store, whether it's in your city, whether it's in the state, or whether it's in your country. And I think that community and that sense of being part of something bigger than the game is what makes Pathfinder tabletop successful. I think it's what's going to make Pathfinder Online successful. And I think right now we're still kind of in the fledgling days of setting those up. But I encourage everybody to go out there and become more involved, not just with your group, but also other groups. And I see groups reaching out across the internet and setting up things like this, setting up wrestling tournaments or whatever, or PvP tournaments or whatever. And Goblinworks would do some things like that in the future. I got a couple of ideas I'm working on. But I think to have it truly be something that becomes a big part of the community is going to be involved, and I think that's where the real success of Pathfinder lies, is that the community working together to do things that are relevant and matter.
Thank you, Lisa, and I really appreciate you hanging out with us for an hour. You did also say, when you were talking about Star Wars, you also said you had met George Lucas, and it was a surreal moment for you. And I have to say, for many people in here, getting to chat with you is some of that same type of surreal moment. So we thank you very much.
And thank you, Hoffman. And this is just the first of these Fireside Chats. I plan to reach out to. I've already reached out to the number of settlements, and some of them have gotten back to me, and we're going to be scheduling times where I can come on to your individual Mumble or TeamSpeak or other methods of talking to each of the settlements, and we'll have more of these, and we'll this is a good chance for me to find out and get feedback on what people think of where the game is, where it's going, and the success stories and the failures and all the other good stuff that lies in as we build this game. And so I appreciate everybody coming out. This is quite a turnout, and I know get more people see this on on Twitch and also on YouTube, because I know you guys are planning to put it up there. So anyways, I thank you all for that, and thank you for welcoming me into the community here and making my first month and a half of Pathfinder Online something much more rewarding than I ever thought it would be, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. And everybody, my shameless plug, the next Pathfinder University class is tomorrow, 9 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Eastern with Spitfire. And Sunday we'll have a new player day from 1 to 8 p.m. Eastern. And for more about Pathfinder University, check out pathfinderuniversity.com.